everybody. Good morning. How are you? It's great to see the room so filled. I'm Betsy Ziegler. I'm the CEO here at 1871. It's a great honor to welcome you. How many of you are here for the first time? All right, terrific. Lots of you. Great. And the big event is listening to these experts on stage here. So I'm just going to give a couple of opening remarks and set this conversation up, and then hand it over to all of you. All right? Make sense? Okay. First of all, I want to thank our partners at Kastle. They are a tremendous group that we're working with. Where is the team in the back, I guess? I'll spread all over, right? So let's give a round of applause to Crown Kastle. They've been a partner of ours for almost a year, and they've just been phenomenal. They put on a series of events that always have a room full of folks, so that's just great. 1871 exists to inspire, equip, and support founders building extraordinary businesses. That is what we do. That is why we're here. We have about 450 companies being built here at 1871 right now. Another roughly 700 that are still alive and growing and operating in the city of Chicago. We are a nonprofit. We measure our impact based on how many jobs have been created, and about just under 12,000 jobs have been created over the last 7 years by the roughly 700 alumni companies, which we feel is terrific, but we are in our early stages as being only around for 7 years, so we've got a long way to go. Chicago, across the whole country, has the highest percentage of female founders of any other city in the country. Does anyone know what percentage of founders that is? Say it again. Just say it louder. 42. Good guess. That's a little high, but we're at 30. We're at 30% in Chicago. The national average is somewhere between 18 and 20. So we feel terrific about that. Now, if you ask me why, I won't be able to tell you scientifically why, but I can give you some hypotheses. At 1871, we have 36% of our founders are female. So this is a very big deal, right? I am the leader of a tech innovation hub, and most of my team, 75% or so of my team, is also female. So we've got a lot of women here, a lot of women in tech driving the agenda forward. I just want to say a couple thoughts on tech, and then women in tech, and then I'll hand it over to you guys. The first is, last year was a record-breaking year in venture capital in the United States, with $130 billion of venture capital invested into tech companies in the United States. Less than 10% of that went to women or traditionally underserved founders, Latinx founders or African American founders. And if you are a Latina founder, the probability of you getting any venture capital funding was of the total, 0.32% of that money went to Latina founders. All right. And if you were an African American female founder, there are 3 zeros. 0.0006% went to you if you were a female African American founder. That is abominable, right? That is just tragic. There are if people know the word unicorn, or so companies that are valued over $1 billion. There are 10 so far female-led unicorn companies in the country. That is about 10% of the total unicorn companies in North America. Okay, roughly speaking. And when a woman raises funding, on average she gets 46 cents to every dollar a man gets. Now, I see some younger women here. So do any of you have brothers? Okay. So let's say, as an example, that would mean that if you were fortunate enough to get an allowance, that your parents gave $10 to your brother and $4.60 to you. Not right? But that's what's happening with female leaders in tech who are trying to raise money. And it's not rational because if you look at the results, the performance, teams that have a more diverse leadership team, a founding team, have a 66% higher return on invested capital, a 50+% higher return on equity, a 20% higher revenue. I mean, like, all of the financial measures say how investing in diversity is way more important than not, and more money should be going to diverse teams, but that is not currently what's happening. So we need a new narrative, right? We need a narrative that is about inspiring more women and underserved founders to engage in and help shape the founding of companies, the funding priorities, and frankly, the building of tech companies. And so this conversation and have this room filled with so many people interested in talking about women in leadership in non-traditionally, in male-dominated spaces is really important. And it's particularly important in my world. So I thank you for being here, and thank you for giving me a few minutes to give you my perspective, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We have the pleasure of introducing today's moderator, Mary Sandberg Boyle. Mary is the Director of News and Operations at WGN Radio. Her career in media spans 19 years, which is 4 years longer than the three of us have been alive.
A Chicagoland native, Mary started at WGN Radio in 2015 and helped launch the station's weekday morning business show, The Opening Bell. Most recently, she was the executive producer and contributor on The Steve Crockett Show.
Previously, Mary Sandberg Boyle was the executive producer on The Steve Dale Show and the B96 Morning Show. She now sits on the Women's Ambassador Board for the First Tee of Greater Chicago. Please help me kick off this panel discussion by welcoming Mary Sandberg Boyle.
That is by far the best introduction I've ever had in my entire life. So thank you very much. And I love that I've been working 4 years longer than any of you have been alive. Thank you to Betsy for her words and what she said. I think the most important thing, I had read that in her profile, that here in Chicago, here at 1871, that 30% of the tech founders here are female. And I think that changes the dynamic of a space, and it makes us really, this actual conversation happening here, even more special. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to get into discussion. And I was told I'm going to start with Jan Goldsmith. She's the principal at Zeller Realty Group. We have Andrea Kuhn, who's the Midwest Regional GM at Kastle Systems. She's in red here. Judith Frydland is the Commissioner, Department of Buildings, City of Chicago. And Jan Goldsmith is Joanne Gottfried is the President of Urban Initiatives. So, innovation. We're going to start with you, Jan. If you could just give us a little bit of bio about yourself.
I'm a principal of Zeller Realty. Zeller is a real estate ownership, development, leasing, and management company. I've been there 30 years. Prior to that, I was with Urban Investment Development and have been in real estate since I was a child. So that's about 45 years ago.
So if we're going to have the girls do the math on that.
We'll be tested.
Judy?
Good morning, I'm Judith Frydland. I am the Commissioner for the City of Chicago Department of Buildings. The Department of Buildings is responsible for issuing all building permits in the City of Chicago, so anything that gets built has to come through our department. Anything that gets rehabbed, again. We also do inspections when people don't have heat or bad porches or no smoke detectors. And we also license all the trades. So we license electricians, plumbers, and so forth. So that's what we do. We have about 285 employees. I've been the building commissioner now for just a little bit over 4 years. I'm an attorney by trade. I worked in the City of Chicago Law Department for over 25 years, representing the building department among other city departments as well. And then I switched from being the attorney to being the client, which was, I think, a very fun switch. So that's where I am today.
Andrea?
Andrea Kuhn. I've been with Kastle for 14 years in April. I'm pretty sure I'm up here today because Randall just wanted to brown nose a little bit and saw an opportunity. So I've worked in just about every department in the company, so worked my way up from account management to project management and national accounts, and then have been in this role where I'm overseeing the entire P&L statement for the region for about 5 years.
I'm Joanne Gottfried. I'm the president of Urban Innovations. Urban Innovations is a real estate services company. We work primarily in this neighborhood. We've got 10 properties in River North, and we also have a large property up in Milwaukee. In a similar way, I always say I got my MBA courtesy of Urban Innovations. I started as the leasing property manager and have worked my way up after 32 years to be running the organization.
All right, so one of these conversations, this women in male-dominated industries that we were discussing before this panel today, was that you kind of get tired of talking about it because we already know that there's not that many women in these industries, and we've been living it and we're still unsuccessful, so it's like, what do you want us to say about this any further? But it's important to talk about because it's getting other people that didn't notice it or don't recognize it to do so. And so in being successful here, even though we're going to work against the norms, it's important to learn how to work with it so you can gain success. And that's what these ladies have done here today. So I thought we'd start at the beginning. In one of the conversations that we had last week, we talked about as young people how we got into things and what your being raised was like. I grew up in a household with a sister, and I did not know that girls were any different than boys and anything they could do. In 8th grade, I had a t-shirt that said, anything boys can do, girls can do better. I went through high school, college, didn't think anything of it. I happened to get my first job, which was in radio, which I didn't even know was going to be my plan. And it wasn't until 3 years in that I had a review when I asked for a raise, and he said, as a girl, you're lucky to even be here. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that I was even not, I was just lucky to be here. And it silenced me. I did not ask for a raise for 12 more years, actually, because of that experience. And so we were talking about this, and Andrea, you said you grew up as one of the boys. There was no difference in your family either.
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 3. My sister is back there. And it was never, you're going to go get a job and you're going to look for a job as a female and one that suits you. It was, you're 15, go get a job. And that was it. And it was, there was really not thinking twice about it. My brother is 15 months older than me, and he used to tell me he wouldn't play with me because I was a girl. And I happened to love Wonder Woman, so I would run upstairs and spin in a circle and come back downstairs and say, oh, I'm a boy, so we can go play. Which probably explains a lot, but it was never a factor. And then, the first time it really occurred to me was once I got higher in the organization. So when I was account managing or project managing, in project management, we talked about this too, you're in a lot of construction meetings, and there's no more male-dominated situation than a construction meeting. And I would walk into these construction meetings and sit down at the table, and they just kind of look past you because you show up and you're in a skirt or, you're a female, and so they don't really, until it comes time for you to talk. And I remember one time I walked in with a new hire, and I was like, well, let me just show you what this is about. And it was a male. And the whole meeting, the construction guys keep looking back to him, and every time they look to him, he's kind of like, I'm going to answer. And so then in every meeting there would be a shift where they stop looking at the male and start looking at you. And then when you get into a leadership role, it becomes a little bit more apparent because it really is the room full of men and you're the minority. It's 25 guys and 3 women. So.
And Judy, you talked about you're the oldest of sisters.
Well, 2 girls, I'm sorry, there's 2 girls and then there's 2 boys.
And then
the
there's 2
oldest of
boys.
4. Yeah.
All right, you're the oldest. And then you were obsessed with the concept of figuring out how to be an expert on things.
Well, I don't know if I was trying to be an expert on things. I think, my parents were older, they were foreign, they had survived a war, they were just into surviving, and so, all this extra stuff and attention I didn't get, which is probably fine because it forced me to be more independent. But the one thing is I had to teach myself how to adapt to American society and how to adapt to this country. And so what I did in grade school in the 5th and 6th grade is I read every biography and autobiography in the school library, all of them. And it didn't matter if it was a man or woman or who they were or what they were. I just really wanted to understand how do you get from where you are to some place else that you might want to be.
And so what I learned from these books is I started to see patterns. And I saw a pattern that you set goals, you accomplish that goal, and then you go to the next goal. Graduate high school, go to college, study something you're interested in, be involved in things that you're interested in, and then maybe go to law school if you think that you wanted to do government or politics or whatever. But whatever your overall goal is you set intermediate steps and you do that. And all the people that I read about were very focused and passionate about what they did, no matter what the job was, even if it wasn't totally related to what they wanted to be. So that's kind of how I taught myself to move forward in life.
Jan, what was your earlier experience like?
So I grew up in a working class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. If I had to kind of put in a single phrase, we all suffered from a failure of imagination as to what we could do. Nobody went to college. Nobody had the money to go to college. Nobody went to college. Girls, career choice: teacher, nurse, secretary, mom. That's what you did. Or you worked in the cookie factory, or you were at a dental, worked as a receptionist in the dentist's office. Nobody really thought about what they could do. We had no role models. We had nobody that we could look to that we knew that was going to college and was successful, particularly as a woman. This applied to the guys too. A lot of the guys in my area didn't go to college. They graduated high school and they went to work. So that, it took me a long time to get out of that. I chose the secretarial route. I was a secretary for a while, until a woman I worked for, who was a banker. And that was very unusual at that time too, for a woman to be a commercial banking officer. Said, you should go to college. I was like, oh, really? So, that started. I went to college. I went to college in a area I won't describe right now because it's totally unrelated to what I'm doing. But that was the start. It was that inability to dream, lack of a role model, and then somebody who finally said, you can do this. Why don't you do this?
Joanne?
Well, we were talking about it the other day, and I realized that many of my friends who have met with success, our role models were our fathers. Our fathers were the ones that left the house. Our fathers were the ones that went to work at 6 in the morning and came home at 7 o'clock at night. And those were our role models. In my family, I'm the youngest of 3, and we were never told that we couldn't do anything. We were always made to feel that we could accomplish anything. And I think that that's how I approached my schooling. That's how I approached my career. I didn't set out to be in real estate at all. Like Jan, I have a completely different degree, but what I was open to opportunity. I worked hard, I kept my head down, I did what was asked of me, I asked a lot of questions, and I showed up. I showed up on time, and you get noticed for putting in the effort, and I think that helps a lot.
Another thing we talked about was the importance of the people you surround yourself with. And this is something that Judy brought up about, she tells her nieces and daughters and things about the friends you keep and having people around you that raise your game. And then I was thinking about it this week, and I thought, boy, that really applies to you in the workplace as well. Finding the people. And in our case, there's oftentimes that's men, and figuring out how to make them your allies, or seek out the ones that are doing the best work and try to do the best work as well, so that way success breeds success, and then it helps your credibility. Judy, can you expand on that more?
Sure. So I have daughters that are 23 and 24, and 2 nieces. I think one's 20 and the other one's 24. So there's a lot of young women in my family. And, I've always tried to give them good advice. And one of the things is that when you're moving forward in life is just to move forward. Don't look to the left. Don't look to the right. See what other people are doing. Don't compare yourself. Just do your best always and focus. And also, really, be careful who you choose to spend time with. be very careful. And it doesn't mean that if you have a friend that's in trouble that you don't want to help your friend. I'm not saying that. But the people that you surround yourself the most with, the people that you are with, are they good for you? Do you learn something from them? Do they lift you up? Do they help you move forward? And there's a lot of you young girls here too. And be careful with who you choose to date and who you choose to be with, because that can limit you. And always be with people that are going to be your cheerleader. Don't be with people that are toxic or try to hold you back or bring you down. That's not good for you. You need to be positive, and you need to be a friend, right? So to be a friend, you don't need to have friends, you have to be a good friend too, right? So all that's very important to you as you move forward. Think about the people that you're surrounding yourself with. Are they challenging you? Are they making you a better person?
So Joanne and Jan, both having a real estate background now, they were talking about, there's some studies of doing deals and then using men to your advantage. There's some people that don't want to deal with just a woman, so bringing a man along with the deal to give you some credibility. Have you had any experiences where somebody didn't want to deal with you?
Real estate is life, and there are personalities. And, when we're working on something, we'll structure it however it's going to be most effective. In some cases, I've been invited to meetings because the ratio of men and women in the sideboard is out of balance. That's okay. You do what you need to do.
I'm really fortunate that the company I work for, there are a lot of egos in real estate. I think that's a fair statement. And especially in the brokerage community, it's about the next deal and the next deal and the bigger deal. And so there's a lot of that. But with my firm, there really aren't a lot of egos in the room. I think if I walked in on a Tuesday morning and said, we're dropping titles, you're just Bob, everybody would go, okay, fine. And that's really refreshing. There are many, many times when you go to a conference and you are clearly in the minority, one of the only women in the room. I've really only felt it once when I was in a meeting and couldn't get anybody's attention. And I remember walking out of that meeting and feeling very frustrated. So again, I think give yourself permission to be in the room. Your voice is as loud and as important as anyone else's. You have ideas. And I think women bring a really unique perspective to situations that men don't always see. And so I think it's doubly important to speak your mind.
So along the lines of mentorship, that's a hot thing now where people have mentors or they think you should find a mentor. And we talked a little bit about having mentors and if it was productive or non-productive or if it's too much work. And Andrea, you said you had a mentor program, but then it became laborious.
Yeah, and we're trying to start another one specific to getting more females in the room at the leadership level. The mentorship program we tried to run was, at work, and it was you're trying to mentor somebody who's really out of town because we're spread all over the country. And so it ended up being we would walk away with tasks to do, and the girls would walk away with tasks to do. When I say girl, she was a professional, but early in her career. And so it kind of faded, and so it wasn't the best, it wasn't, the most successful mentorship program. We're trying it again, but I think the way we're doing it this time is more slowly and more conversations about really trying to figure out what people want out of their career. So there's more prep work being done than just throwing a mentor at somebody because we think they'd have a good conversation.
Oh, sure. So on the conversation of money, let's discuss that. Just so you guys know, Jan's worked on projects upwards of $100 million value, and then Judy she manages a $37 million budget. So they do a lot of money. But when it comes to advocating for money for yourself, it can be really challenging. As I told you, I asked for more money. I was told that I should be lucky that I was a girl and I knew that what I was getting. And it took 12 more years to ask for money again. And I was actually encouraged to by my husband because, of course, we all want more money. We both work in similar industries, and a lot of what we make is dictated based on things that are outside our control, so you're not always going to get it. But he was like, every time I get a new contract, I ask for more money, even if they've already told me we're not doing raises this year. Because it's a good practice to ask for more money, and you never know what's going to happen. open, and I was like, well, I don't ever want to be as uncomfortable as I was the time I was told that I wasn't getting more money, so I don't want to ask. And so the last time I asked for more money, I didn't get it, but it was a really good practice in feeling uncomfortable, but sticking up for myself and I gave reasons on why I thought I should get the more money. And so it's just a habit that I don't think girls are taught necessarily. Have any of you had any experience with, Andrea, yeah.
So my best one, actually my best advice came from my mom. I was on a trip to see some friends out near Iowa, and the position that I'm currently holding opened up. And I had told her conversations that I had with my boss at the time. And he said, well, you know, Andrea, let me think about it, maybe on a trial basis. And I called my mom. She's like, you know, and she was in HR, you know, if they were going to go outside the company and hire somebody, they'd go outside the company and hire somebody. They're either going to hire you or they're not. And that's exactly what I went back to him and said. And he was like, oh, you're right, okay. And then, you know, paid me less for a while, and then those things all played out, but yeah.
I've been pretty fortunate. I'm a close friend with my boss, and so I tend to time it when I feel he's going to be receptive to the idea. But I try to be strategic. My husband's always, go in. I'm like, not today. But I had one of the guys in the office come back from a conference where they talked about the disparity, and I was talking to my boss about it, and he said, well, do we have that kind of disparity? And I said, yeah, actually, you don't pay me as much as you pay the other guys, and I got a raise. So that was pretty good.
That is pretty good. Jan?
I think you look at it as a process too. You just don't go in there and say, I want more money. You're going to get more money because you have skills in doing your job. So you go in and you determine what the market's paying, what you're bringing to the company. Not what the company can do for you, what you're bringing to the company. What other people, from what you can find out, make within the company. What additional initiatives you want to undertake. Part of asking for more money is establishing the value that you're bringing to the company and laying it out very clearly, because that's part of your job. If you're going to do your job really well and clearly and effectively, you're going to go ask for money well and clearly and effectively.
Knowing your value is an important statement that you said there. Women in general they own their success less than men. I sit in a department head meeting every week, and the gentleman that's our head of sales is a man. And when he goes through with his update, everything is about, I did this, I did this, I did this with my team. It's all, and then I noticed that when we would get to my portion of things, I was like, our team did a great job on this. This show really did a great job on this. I was like giving credit to all these other people, because as women, we tend to recognize the team more than ourselves. But in getting ahead and getting successful, you have to point out what you've done. That's an important thing to learn, to be able to say, like, I did this, and it happened because of me. Anyone have anything to speak on there? Where sharing your success?
Something makes you angry at some point where you've given credit so many times to other people because it feels like the right thing to do. And then you don't see it coming back, and you're like, well, I'm just going to stop doing that. You know, it's like I led this great team, or I surrounded myself with this great team, but yeah.
We also talked about hiring people. I'm sorry, Jan, were you gonna?
I was also going to say it's a process too. You can't let individual aggravations and disappointments skew you off your path. You know, part of success is developing a thick skin. You know, you're going to have great times and you're going to have really times you need to tough it out. But on average, if you're in the right position, you know, you're on an even keel, and you don't let this little stuff make you crazy, as it will.
Another thing that, you know, if you read anything about women in male-dominated industries, they suffer from something called imposter syndrome, where it's like you think, like, what am I doing here? How did I get here? They made a mistake. I don't know what I'm doing. And I know I go through this all the time, and then I remove and don't think about it as me, and I look at this woman who's done all this stuff, and I thought, oh, she's right in the right spot, and people should be listening to her. but it's difficult to battle, and it's just, our genetic makeup that, makes it part of how we are. I don't know if any of you had any moments in your career where you thought, I am not capable of this.
I think imposter syndrome is a real thing, and I've certainly experienced it a number of times as I've moved through the company. But I think in listening to you and thinking about it, I think it's important to start to exercise those muscles early. Talk to your teachers, put yourself in front of your professors, ask questions, come to them with ideas, get that feedback, get comfortable having those interactions. The more you do it, the more you exercise that muscle, the easier it'll get as you continue in your career.
I'd also suggest that relationships with other female peers is important too. Being able to talk, share experiences, ask advice, collaborate. You're not alone in this. And if you approach it on an isolated basis, it can really have a detrimental effect. But when you kind of band together with other women and discuss the challenges, how has somebody else dealt with this? How can you help somebody else? How can you work together? Part of my success is the fact that I work with other terrific women, and we help each other out. There's not a lot of drama. The men are far more dramatic than we are. So the whole idea of women being emotional is just like, really? Come on. But that mutual support can be incredibly invaluable.
Judy, you have a big team, a lot of men. That can be challenging when they have a woman come in and is going to, you changed a lot of things since you've been there. You've made things more efficient, more permits are getting out, you've changed just the system and how it's all working, you've rewritten a building code 70 years old. I mean, you did a lot of things. Did you ever hear anything like, she's crazy, what is she thinking?
Well, I am crazy. I think being a little crazy is okay. It's fine. Like I said, I had worked in the law department before coming to the building department, and I had represented the building department. So many of the inspectors, reviewers, people knew who I was, and I always defended them. I always defended the city. I always fought for public safety. So when I came to the building department, I had a reputation, and they knew that I cared, and that meant a lot to them. And so, and they knew that I had the credentials to do this job. And so I didn't really have issues too much with that, with the inspectors, reviewers, and the senior staff that I work with. It's very important to have good people around you, male, female, whatever. The most important thing that when you choose who you surround yourself with is, do we have the same vision? Are we looking at things the same way? Do we believe that people should be able to get their permits quicker so their businesses can start faster? Do we believe that people should be in safe units with heat in the winter? We believe that. How do we get that done? Do we believe in being compassionate when you find an older person in a building that's a hoarder, and how do you help them and find their family? So if you have the same philosophy, the same vision as the people that you surround yourself with, then you're going to be a star. But if you surround yourself with people that are going in a different direction, then there's going to be conflict and you're not going to be able to move forward. But the other important thing when you choose the people that you surround yourself with is you have to be open to criticism. You cannot want yes people around you. You want people to say, hey Jude, you know what? I think you're going down the wrong path here. You need to look at it this way and that way. And you're like, oh, I would rather you tell me before I make a decision all the pitfalls than let me make the decision and make me feel like I'm grand and watch me fall flat on my face, right? That's embarrassing. Tell me what you really think. Have open and honest communication with the people around you so that you can be the best, because we can't think of everything. And no matter how successful we are, at the end of the day, what do I think? What could I have done better today? Did I make a mistake? Could I have done this better? Could I have done that better? Even if the outcome was good, could it have been better? And the other thing that I want to tell a lot of you young girls here is you will fail. There are going to be times that you will fail. I failed my first midterm in college, flat out. Back in the days, they gave you a paper, big fat F on it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I took AP high school classes, like how did this happen to me? And you know, a lot of people I think would have just said, walked away. And I went to the professor and I said, what do I do? And he gave me a teacher's assistant, and I got through college, and then I went to law school, and it was fine. So don't give up. There'll be jobs you might get fired. Okay, what could you learn from being fired? And move on. Move on and learn and be honest and be humble. And the thing is, you want to have confidence. And you know, the funny thing is, here is 3 of us have, well, I've heard 2 of you, and then my husband will be the 3rd. It's the husbands that tell us, go out and ask for a raise, go out and ask for more. Because they were raised with this confidence level that maybe some of us are not raised with. And so you want to be confident, but you don't want to be arrogant. And that's an important distinction.
Yeah, that's along the failure lines. Andrea brought that up. That college, schooling in college now, while education is so important, they do not prepare you for failing in a sense of in the real working world, and that's part of the learning process. I know I was fired from a job, and it actually, the thing you learn is it's not the end of the world, and life still went on the next day, even though I didn't have that job, and I had to think about, that was a real education on figuring out how to market myself, because then I had to, you know, like, go out there and say, this is why you should, you know, hire me, but it wasn't, it's okay. Also, in relating and finding female people to talk to and things like that, I'm sure many of you had this, that you have to be perfect. Like everything has to be perfect, and I thought I always had to be perfect, and you know, my house is perfect, and everything at work is perfect, and you never miss a day, and I'm never late. You never would take a sick day, because that would then make it seem like I was human. And then I started to find I was unrelatable, because I was able to maintain this whole thing at work, you know, like everything is like, but then I was like this cold, non-human person. And so then I'm like, you know, little things like my upbringing, like the first house I lived in a trailer park until I was 10. That's what my parents could afford. But they sent us to private school. They saved all their money and it went to our school. And then I used to not say that I lived like that, because I'm like, people think I'm perfect. They think that I went to these schools and that I'm like everybody else, and I'm like, but I'm not. But you can still come from a little bit and then, you know, have a lot. And then once I started sharing that burden of like, geez, everybody thinks I've had it all together for this whole time, and it took me 5.5 years to finish college because I was dumb a little bit. So, and it cost me a lot of money, and I wish somebody beforehand just would have said, this is how this is gonna cost you. This is, by taking this opportunity and messing it up, it's gonna cost you a lot of money, because you learn, you're like, oh, maybe that would have made some better decisions. But I don't know if you felt the pressure to be perfect at all in your life, or what you've presented out there with your home life and work life.
100%, yeah. Everything has to be perfect. I don't, you know, the reason I'll be sitting at my desk at 10 o'clock at night is I don't start something until I finish it. And I don't mail it in on anything, so that still is the case, yeah. But I think your point earlier, I don't hire people directly out of school because they haven't failed. It's not because they haven't learned to succeed, it's because they haven't failed. You learn so much more from your failures than you do from your successes. And especially in salespeople. So I'm like, oh, you don't know how to sell yet because you haven't had that big loss yet.
Jan?
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about all my failures. But it's true. You know, part of it is attitude. Attitude, as you're describing, is everything. If you can look to get out of every experience something good, some growth, failure can put you in a new direction. You know, it's you may be following one course and you fail, and it's your wake-up call. Like, I really don't want to do that, or I want to go, it's time for me to look for another job. Or, I was talking to this person the other day, and that opportunity sounds more interesting. It's being very thoughtful and not, it's letting your head rule less than your emotions rule, and thinking it through. I mean, good work is a blessing. You know, a good job is so satisfying. But going back to attitude, it's you making the job good too. You know, if you're a barista, be the best barista. And experiment and try and make things more efficient. You know, it's no matter what you do, if you just treat it lackadaisically, it's not fun. You know, but if you look at it as a challenge, you know, how to improve, how to be more creative. First, it gives you more satisfaction. And two, people begin to notice you. You know, you're kind of elevating yourself above the crowd there by trying to by looking at the company, how you make things better. What can you do for the company, not what the company can do for you. If you are looking at those improvements, if you're showing the passion, you're showing the energy, it comes back to you in terms of that satisfaction and growth.
So, Judy, I think it was you that said it, along those lines, what can you know, thinking about what the company can teach you and not what you're gonna walk around telling them how you're so great.
So another thing I told my nieces and anybody that asked me for job interview advice, when you apply for a job or go for an interview, you're not gonna talk about what the company can do for you, okay? They're gonna pay you, that this is not what they're gonna do for you. You have to tell them what you can do for them. How can you help their company grow? How can you help them accomplish their goals? They're going to be paying you and they want a result. Of course you're gonna get good experience from the job, but they're not paying you to give you experience, right? So when you go to a job application, when you're writing that cover letter, when you're going to that interview, be prepared to make a list of 5 to 10 things that you can do for them. And I'm telling you, it's very successful. My one niece, you know, she got a job at Facebook. I mean, you just have to go out there and show that you are there to be, to show that you have the ability to accomplish. What can you accomplish for them? What can you do for them? And I'm telling you, you will have a different experience and a much better experience in your job interviews. Because a lot of times, I know I've interviewed hundreds of people for jobs. As soon as they start telling you what you're gonna do for them, you're zoned out. Oh my goodness.
Ask good questions in those interviews. Ask good questions.
There's no excuse in today's social media world that you haven't done your homework to find out about the company and where you're going, regardless of if it's the Park District and you know you're going to be a camp counselor. There's a lot of information out there, and I would say use it to your advantage.
Absolutely.
I add to it, it's a process too. You will not get a vice president title with your first job. And seriously, I think there is, you need to come in with realistic expectations.
Right, Jan, you know what we were saying, I was gonna talk about patience and being driven, but balancing that with the need for movement up a ladder and, you know, recognition instantly. So go ahead, because that goes along with that.
Yes. So part of it is taking a look at what the career paths are for the areas you're getting into. What does it take to get the experience? What does it take to move up the ladder? Sometimes you do something which is maybe not so interesting. It may be more routine. It may be not directly related to your career path, but if you're getting valuable experience and background that contributes to your career path, that can be very valuable. So kind of mapping out the path more strategically with realistic expectations at each stage can be much more satisfying than disappointed expectations.
I think we're all here because we're women in non-traditional fields, and I think that's a great opportunity for all of the people in the room. I think that if you actually look towards non-traditional fields, even to the extent certainly in the construction industry, there are roles for women in the trades that maybe you're not looking at that are really great careers. And there are plenty of roles, you know, I wish that STEM had been around when I was a young girl coming up. I think the opportunities in technology and engineering, grab those, because I think you will stand out because you're female. maybe you get hired because you're female a little bit, you're just as qualified, but maybe you got the extra nudge, take it.
Yeah, don't ever turn down a little extra help. I used to think, well, I'm gonna do it in spite of, I don't need you to say it, because I'm like, why not? Other people get gifts and help and take whatever they need the girls and they're hiring you, like take it and then show them how amazing you really are. I think progress really starts with the recognition that women can be just as successful as men in all areas, and so I think we're getting there. I know my parents didn't even think this was going to be a thing still when I was this age. They didn't think that we'd be talking about, are there women in the workplace? We thought it'd go much quicker, but we're on a good path and we're in good hands with the young people in this room. I think we're going to go to the Q&A right here. I just want to thank you to 1871, Kastle Systems, K-Cancer Softball, Betsy, Joanne, Judy, Andrea, Jan, and Randall for setting this up, and all of you for making this possible. It's really special to be a part of conversations with really important women.
Okay, so now it's time for the question and answer segment. So it's time for you to find out something you really want to know. So if you have a question, you can line up by those two tables over there. So I'm going to start this off because I have a question for Mary.
Yes.
Who is the craziest radio person you've ever encountered with?
The craziest person I've ever encountered. Well, there's actually some crazy people that I can't mention because of legal reasons. But the person that I worked the longest with was a gentleman named Steve Dahl, and he's a talk show host here in Chicago. I grew up listening to him, and so another thing about taking any job, he needed a personal assistant. That was the job, and I had interned in radio, and I was like, I can do that. And so the first 6 months I got soup, socks, if he needed new underwear. I was like, but he was, he's notoriously crazy, but he was very open about, he owned his crazy, so you knew exactly what you were dealing with, in that you never knew what you were dealing with. So I'd say he was the one. And then I will say I had, every 96, there was a host that slept through the show, and he's no longer the host of that. So that was another problem for one show.
So this question is kind of broad, and all of you could answer this because it goes to all of you. So what is your biggest accomplishment as a woman working in your field?
Let's start with Jan.
Respect. It's very satisfying after all these years to have the respect of my peers and the opportunities that come with it. It's not having to fight so hard, which feels really good. So I would say finally there.
Judy.
Wow, that's a great question. I like Jan's answer. I'll copy that. I think it's the satisfaction of knowing that all the years of hard work and worry and stress and everything that I've gone through, raising a family while working, the whole thing, that it has been recognized, and that I was given the ability to try and make changes, and I was able to do it, and just getting to this point in life where, all the stress and hard work, has paid off, and that I can continue to work, and I hope to work for many more years, and to try to help people, because I think in the end, I think my goal has always been is to try to help people, and that gives me a great satisfaction. And sometimes just giving, if you're, like Jan said, the barista job, somebody might have had a hard day and they want a really good hot cup of tea, and you make that for them and they feel better, you've done something for that person that day, and you should have as much satisfaction in doing that than anything that I could have done.
Biggest accomplishment is that what you said? So I earned a 20 under 40 recognition when I was under 40. That was fun. I think I'm most proud of the fact that I was under 40. And then, I think there's little wins all the time. There's being in this role 5 years, I'm more of one to sit back and observe for a long time, so I listen to everybody else for a very long time. A lot of those people that were in my counterparts are now gone, and there are new men in those roles. And so now the tables have kind of turned where they're like, oh yeah, what Andrea said. So those kind of things are like little everyday wins.
First, it's a great question, so thanks for asking it. It made me kind of really stop and think. When I started with the firm, there were 5 people, and I don't think that I came into the firm thinking what the future would hold or where we were going to go, but now looking back on it, the fact that we've grown to the extent that we have, and the fact that we continue to grow and we're actually really on the cusp of another big piece of growth for our company, and the fact that the company's still in existence in real estate in Chicago, looking back on that, that's a pretty good sense of feeling of accomplishment for me, that I was able to help shepherd the company through the years to get it to the point where it is today.
I have 2 things there. I'm in a business where very publicly they tell everybody how you've done and how you haven't done. And so I am proud of that every show that I was a part of did better while I was a part of the show than when I wasn't. And so I may have rooted for failure for people when I wasn't a part of their shows, but my biggest accomplishment came when I was interviewing for the job that I have now, and I had an interview with 3 gentlemen that I've known for a long time in the industry. They're the main people at our company, our bosses, and they were questioning whether I could handle the full position and if they should split it in 2 parts, and I went into every single interview with the 3, I had to do multiple rounds with them, and I asked for the job. I said, I am interviewing for, I know I can do this position, and this is why. And I said, I am proud of the fact that I am not part of the same 7 men that get recycled and put in, all the radio stations, they just keep getting the same job at different stations every time there's an opportunity. And I'm not in that fraternity, and I was very proud of it. And I stated it exactly. I laid it out. And I was so proud of myself, even if I didn't get the job, because I asked for it and I said why, and I ended up getting the job. But I think that was as a person who doesn't always talk about what they did well in things, I was proud that I asked for it.
Hi, this is really nerve-wracking being up here to answer your question.
It is. You know what Emma told me though? Emma gave me some advice. I told her I was nervous beforehand, and she goes, it's just a room full of people.
But a couple of the comments that you've made were like, instead of saying our team or we did a good job, start talking about yourself, or do what you need to do, almost as if being in a male-dominated industry is like a chess game where the system is upon us and we have to figure out how almost not to be ourselves. And I guess my question is, how can we as women who maybe weren't naturally taught to be confident or say I statements, or even just want to be a little bit less strong, succeed if we don't necessarily want to almost behave like a man? I don't necessarily want to say it that way, however it does feel a little bit like that.
So I don't think that you have to behave like a man. I don't think I've ever behaved like a man. Well, maybe a few times, like when I've gotten mad at people. I mean, the women get mad at people when they get mad at their kids, right? When their kids do wrong or they see a wrong, we get mad. So that's a female trait. I was always trying to be myself, and I never tried to be somebody else. So when we talk about how the men are, I don't think it's necessarily saying you have to be like them. Just be aware. Just be aware that that's how they operate. But if you're not yourself and you're not genuine, you're not going to get anywhere because people aren't going to trust you, right? Because when I talked about going in the building department and I had worked with these people, they trusted me by then. They had a relationship. They knew that what they saw is what they got. Don't ever be fake. Don't try to be somebody else. You're great the way you are. You know what your strengths are and you know what your weaknesses are as a human being, not as a male or female, right? There's good human being qualities. So work on your, enhance your strengths, work on your weaknesses as who you are. Be yourself, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. But as you said, the awareness of who you're dealing with, and men, not that you have to be like them, but you have to know how they think, how they present themselves. My husband and I play golf, we play golf together. After every round, he goes over like every shot he hit, and that's just that they evaluate and they, you know, they say if it was good, that I had a good time, that's how I evaluate. I don't talk about every shot. And so like, but if I'm at, you know, work and you're dealing with it, and you're dealing with men and they deal with stats and figures and, you know, that's, you gotta relate to them on their level, you know, so it might take some time to get used to for you to feel like confident in doing that, but it's okay to, you know, do that.
Fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Seriously, you'll get to a point, and that I think comes with time too, but my confidence honestly comes from being quiet and listening and asking people a lot of questions. You learn way more from asking people questions than you do talking, despite them saying more than my thing. But then when you get to a point and you know eventually I can learn every element of this job, even if I don't know it right now, go for the job and fake it until you make it, and you will. You'll get it. You're smart, you'll get it.
I'd add to that, you're both an I and a we. So your success is going to be determined to some considerable extent by the people you're working with. So being part of the team, collaborating, you do better personally if everybody on your team does better. So it's kind of balancing that out. How much are you kind of subsuming yourself within the group? How much are you working independently? And that's something that just comes with time and experience.
I would also encourage you just to have conversations with people outside of that field. You know, Jim was talking about groups. There are plenty of groups that help mentor, that have advice, that how would you handle this situation? Maybe there's a job you want to go after, or maybe you were in a meeting and you didn't like the way it turned out. You don't always have to go back to the people that were in that meeting. You know, there are other teachers or other family members that may have had. Don't hesitate to seek out advice. You don't always have to take the advice, but be open to listen to it.
Don't ever try to be me. Seriously, there's nothing more powerful than being a successful female. Yeah.
There's studies that show that men, when they're interviewing, will interview what the potential they can do, and that women just list what they've done. They don't talk much about what they can also, like they don't play up to the role. So just being aware of that your nature is to maybe not sell yourself and, you know, push yourself a little further to do so is important too.
I'm back. So I have this question for Joanne, but anyone else can feel free to answer. Being as successful as you guys are, how did it affect like your family life?
It's interesting because when you ask me about my accomplishment, my first accomplishment that I always think of is that I have a terrific 25-year-old daughter who's a speech therapist and does really well, and we're really close, so that's really nice. I was a working mom, and I had a lot of guilt about being a working mom, but I'm really fortunate my husband stayed home for a number of years, so I think everybody kind of needs a wife on some level. It's important to balance that stuff at home and don't just take on everything because you're the woman and you feel like you have to do all of the stuff at work and at home. Find somebody who's going to help you with that balance, or if you're lucky enough, you know, hire the cleaning lady to come in every once a month or something so you don't have to do that. But you will find the balance, and the kids will turn out okay. I think that's how it turns out too. If they're in preschool, then guess what? They have a social life that they wouldn't have had if you were home with them all day. And if they're latchkey kids, then they'll be okay for that hour until you can get there, and you just make it work.
I'm Andrea's brother-in-law, so she's probably a little concerned about this question. We heard all of you talk a little bit about college and your college experiences. I'm curious to know how many of you are working in a field that your degree is associated with, and what are other thoughts you might have about that?
I am not working in a field where I earned my degree. I got a degree in community recreation. I was going to run a Parks and Recreation department. I actually worked at the East Bank Club before they opened. I was putting the lockers on the locks in the men's locker room. I remember that. But I met a lot of really interesting people there, and I got offered a job through that and just sort of progressed into my career. I worked in Parks and Recreation my whole, when I was in high school, I ran a dump truck for a while in the maintenance department. I worked at the skating rink. I did all of those kinds of things, which was really my interest. But I just took the opportunities as they came, and here I am.
Hi, Scott. So I majored in business management and administration. I had no idea what I wanted to do. My dad pushed me towards business. So how I got here in security, I have no idea. And I think Judy said the same thing. We were at breakfast one morning. She's like, I have no idea how I got here. You just go find something that you enjoy and you work your way up.
Yeah, we open opportunities. I was a communications major in college, so that's pretty generic. So I do use a lot of what I learned in college, and I even had a little radio show in college. So what I've learned there, obviously, I use in my job. But then after that, I went to graduate school, and I have a master's in community health care planning and administration. Don't really use it, except that there are some principles in that graduate program of administration, that I can use. But just be open. You never know.
Okay, I'll be honest. Anthropology. It was enormously interesting. But remember I said I was a secretary, so I had to put myself through school. So I go to school in the morning, and I work in the afternoon. I went to work for a construction company. And first I started as just being a secretary, and then I started doing timekeeping, and I started doing estimating. Before you know it, I'm an estimator. And you just never know what's, where your path is going to go.
I was a communication major with broadcast, a broadcast specialty, but it wasn't anything that we did there really didn't apply for me in my job. The one thing I always throw out that I learned in college was from the Communication 101 was when I learned about how boys are taught to spread out and girls sit closed in on the couch, and which applied, it's actually really useful, but it was a minor little thing that I learned the first year in the first semester. So for me, college was a necessary evil. My parents did not graduate from college, and you're graduating from college, and so that was, you're going to graduate from college before you get pregnant. That's what I was told. So that was my number one driving force. But I think I worked through school as well, and I think it taught, what I learned more was about balance of my time and appropriating energy and where it could go, and then also how much fun. And I told you I made mistakes there on that. Yeah, that's all part of the experience, right?
Thank you.
I have a question. So our softball team's going to be downtown the rest of the day, and we were wondering if there are any really cool spots that we could go see. This is mainly for Judy, but all of you can answer.
You're gonna be walking around the city.
Yep.
You have to hit the river walk. That's absolutely beautiful, and you can hit it right over here, and you can walk all the way to Lake Michigan and back. That's beautiful. You can see the Picasso at the Daily Plaza. You all know about the bean, probably all have been there, but that's always a fun thing to do. And if you ever have time, maybe on a different day, you come down and do the Chicago Architecture Tour on the boat. That is a magnificent experience, and you get to learn a lot about Chicago's architecture. And just walking up and down Michigan Avenue is fun, and the new Apple store that Jan's company developed, and that would be great, because that's new conceptually, like a store right down on the river with the steps going down. And there were a lot of architectural challenges, shall we say.
Which Judy was enormously helpful in.
But they were very cooperative, and they came to us with solutions. And so that's fun things to do. And speaking of cooperative and solutions, it's there's always going to be problems and issues you have to solve at work, whether they're architectural or whatever. So when you go to your boss with some problem that you're having, go to them with a couple of solutions too. Right? Don't just say, oh my goodness, this happened, I don't know what to do. Just don't do that. Say, you know what, this happened, it's complicated, but here are some thoughts I have about how we could solve it. Boy, will you be a rock star. You're gonna take enormous pressure off your boss.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello. I just have a question. I was a banker for about 20 years. Then I started as, at the bottom, worked my way up. And I took a break, a long break, having kids. Found myself working, 12 hours, 13 hours a day with all the mergers, and I took time off. Did any of you experience that? And any suggestions on how to re-enter at the age of 24 plus 20? No, I'm 44. So, I didn't know if any of you had that experience at all, where you had taken a break in your career and then had issues with re-entering. No? If you're hiring,
Yeah, I haven't taken a break, but we have hired people that took a break, and it really adds, this speaks to needing variety in your offices anyway, and diversity, just with having women. It is refreshing to have somebody re-enter the workforce, and what they bring is a whole different, I don't look at it as you missed out on, let's say, 10 years of work to do that. You just gained different work experience in managing a household, it's way more challenging and no one paid you. So, I think probably though, in starting it, all the ones that I've dealt with, they maintained relationships or reached out to people, that we knew, and it's like, hey, I'm getting back into this. So that way, you're not just going cold, maybe.
Right, because we've hired people too like that at the city. So I think the important thing is just to maybe get back into maybe some banking organizations or something, just join them. And then when you go to the interviews, just show that you've been keeping up with it, even though you weren't working, you know what the latest trends are, and that you belong to these associations. If there's ever an opportunity, even like for a not-for-profit, to do a little volunteer work for them, and just kind of like wade your way back in, because it can happen. I mean, you've got a lot of good years ahead of you to work.
Randall, did you hear that? Can I use cake cancer on my resume? All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Hi all, my name is Cristina Gallo. I am the founding and principal of my small architecture studio via Chicago. My husband is also my business partner. We talked a lot about ways that men might be better than women in certain trades of negotiation, speaking up for themselves, getting rewarded for their job. I just want to see if you guys have any ideas on how women might be better than men in other ways. I found that being empathetic has helped me be a good leader and a good problem solver in my skill, and that we are more empathetic than men. So just finding those strengths that we have as well that make us unique.
I think we're all unique, so part of it is being, I think it's a mistake to say men, women. We're all really on a continuum, and, women, some women are more empathetic, some are pretty, actual, and less empathetic. I think it's really seeing what your own, how your own personality, how your own traits really fit into your organization, how you really work with the people around you. And you're going to be different. Sometimes you're going to be empathetic, sometimes you may be a little bit more, I don't want to use the term strict, but I don't want to use the word discipline, but different in your approach.
I took a personality test once that it was discover what you're best at. And I went through this whole thing, and I was in my 20s, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it scored me so low on compassion that it told me to be a librarian. Basically said, you are a serial killer. I would agree that certain traits are not necessarily specific to gender. That is not, I am not making that up. It was like higher education, be a different librarian. But one of the things that I think is really important too is when you go into those situations where you have to do things that aren't comfortable for you, like asking for more money, practice it and go in having done research. And one of the best things I read recently, and I have not been in a Me Too situation. But one of the best things I read is that what women tend to do, or people tend to do in those situations when they're harassed, is they freeze. Because it's so unexpected. They have no idea, they didn't see it coming, it's so unexpected, they have no idea what to say. So they go home at the end of the day, they're like, oh my God, I should have said this, and they come up with 10 things that they should have said. Practice. Practice what you would do in that situation so you are ready and so that you come back with something that's confident and that sends a message that I'm not open to this. So that's completely different than what you asked, but it goes.
That's great. Thanks.
Anybody appreciate what the panelists had to say?